Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. When I'm not doing this, I'm busy preparing our rehearsals we will have soon with VOLA, preparing for the tour in November. And I also just became a dad 4 months ago, so
Oh,
I also have a,
congrats.
a baby to take care of.
Yeah.
Um,
How is that going to be for you as a dad? I guess your first tour as a father.
it's gonna be strange. Like he develops so fast, so I'm definitely gonna feel when I get home after that month that he has grown enormously, and I will miss some peak moments along the way, I guess, when I'm away in his development. But I'll make sure there will be a lot of FaceTiming.
Yeah. Well, and at least they will not remember that you were gone. Well, at least
Yeah,
not now,
no,
but
yeah.
that's
True.
trouble for later, I guess. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, you're releasing Friend of a Phantom in a couple of weeks. So how are you feeling about the upcoming release?
very excited. It's been 3 years since the last album, um, and it's just like the Witness album cycle was weird because of the COVID pandemic. So it was very hard to predict how the future would be at that point, and our touring was very scattered. So I look forward to an album cycle that's a bit easier to predict. And fingers crossed there won't be any new pandemic coming up.
Yeah, yeah, well, we could yeah, we I don't think anybody would want that. But yeah,
No,
I guess the Witness album was also an album that had really good reception, and I'm guessing that you got a lot of new fans through that one as well, even though the pandemic happened. But in a sense, what was it like for you to dive into the next one? Like, was there some extra pressure or
it was a bit difficult, I think, partly because of the pandemic, actually, because it was difficult to decide on when we should begin writing this album because our touring was pushed so much because of Corona. And normally, I really like to finish one project before I start the next one. And we've done that with earlier albums, so sort of finished the last tour and then gone full on writing the next album. But we couldn't do that this time, or else too much time would just be wasted. So we had to write in between touring, which was difficult, I think, um, because I, it was it wasn't as easy to keep focus as when there was only one project at the time for me, and also partly because I think Witness fulfilled many of the dreams I have about an album, both in terms of the songwriting, but also the production and the mix. So it it was a bit difficult to find out where to go next after that, because that album really was all that I have dreamed of creating for a long time. So it was a bit more about starting from scratch and figuring out what excites us now, and how do we make sure this doesn't sound like Witness Part Two.
Yeah, and I think that there are like plenty new ideas in this one. It's a little bit softer maybe than Witness, but when it's
Yeah,
heavy, it gets really heavy, and there are a few cool prog breakdowns, if that's a thing as well that I liked. And one
yeah,
thing that I also noticed is that the vocals, I mean, it's not that you are doing really different things, but I think that there are some productional aspects that might be a bit different. And I noticed in a few songs that it seems like the keyboard melodies are also following the vocal lines sometimes a little bit,
Yeah,
which gives
yeah,
it this really cool effect. So what was it
cool.
like for you to also experiment with that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's like it's nice to treat the vocals as an instrument, I think, and just be as creative as possible with with the voice. And yeah, for this album, I, for example, did more uh, like harsh vocals, I would say. Like before, I've done some screams, but there's a bit more this time because it was just the songs called for some extra aggression, and that felt like an exciting path to go down. Um, and then there's, like you also hinted at, it's more mellow stuff where my vocals are like very much in the front and without very much going on around them. And I that's something I appreciate also a lot. So it's nice to be able to have those dynamics on an album. It gives me a lot of like freedom to express myself vocally. So that's it's nice that it's something the other guys in the band like as well.
What was it like for you to explore the growling more? Because I mean,
Yeah.
it's not so apparent yet in the singles that you have released. I think there's
No.
one part in, I don't remember, was it Break My Lying Tongue where you do
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
But then in Bleed Out, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
So do you have any like growlers that you look up to?
Yeah. Definitely. Um, so some big names for me are uh, Bjorn from Soilwork. I'm a big fan of his. Um, and obviously Anders from In Flames. Um, and Jens from Meshuggah. Those have been those guys have been important for me. And I used to when I was like learning how to sing and how to scream, just trying to imitate them, uh, doing my own soil work or Meshuggah recordings at home and see how close I could get to their tone. And that was before there was all these tutorials on YouTube. So it was more about DIY
Yeah.
with with the tools I had at hand at that point.
Well, you mentioned Anders, and obviously he's also on the album, so that must be like a
Yeah,
dream come true. But why
yeah,
did you decide in the end that Cannibal should have somebody else involved and not just you growling?
yeah. I did some screams on the demo, but we thought it would benefit from having some next level screams that I wasn't capable of doing, and at the same time we had just established a bond with Anders when we were on tour in the US, and he came to our show in Los Angeles. Him and Bjorn from In Flames. So we had this fresh connection with him, and like we needed some awesome screams for the song. So it felt like the obvious choice to reach out to him.
What I really personally liked is also that the growls are maybe a bit more in the mix than your own vocals,
Yeah,
a bit louder. And considering with the theme of the song or something like that, it felt logical. Was that sort of the idea behind it as well, and the reason why they're more prominent?
not really. That was a choice our like mixing engineer made. But yeah, I think you're right that it fits the album the song title well. Um, that it sounds yeah, sort of scary and intimidating in that sense that it's so prominent in the mix.
Also really like that, this was one of the heavier songs of the record, obviously, and it was actually nice to have that as an opening song. So was that for you like the most logical choice to open this record?
Yeah, we thought it would be nice just to start with a bang. It's it's something I often like when I listen to music, that it gets to the point quite fast. I'm really not that fond of music that takes a long time to develop. I do like some artists that do that. For example, in ambient music, like that should be slow. Uh, and I also like Pink Floyd and Tool, for example, who takes a long time to reach like a peak of a song sometimes. But when I write myself, I just most often prefer it to be very much to the point, and it just felt sort of explosive to have that as the first song. Um, and hopefully people appreciate to just get that slap in the eardrum from the get-go.
But I also, especially I guess with Witness and also this album, is that you're playing around a little bit more with like minimal soundscapes as well, which I think Glass Mannequin on this album is like a perfect
Yeah,
example of that, where it's just, it's all centered around your vocals. So how do you come up with a song like that? Is that something that you do, when that song specifically, that come when the rest of the material is written, where you like the album still needs a moment like that, or is it just an idea that came at some moment?
that first line in the song just appeared in my head when I think I was brushing my teeth or something, and so and it wasn't planned to that there should be a song at that point. Um, but like we did need a ninth song for the album, because we thought that that would be the ideal amount of songs. So maybe that consideration has been like working in the back of my head, and that's why that line showed up. And but I just followed it and wrote like the main instrumentation on the piano for that, and it's yeah, it just took off from there. So it wasn't planned that we needed that there should be a quiet song like that, but it was convenient because I think it makes the spectrum of aggression on the album very wide, which is something I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, no, I actually, it's one of my favorite tracks. And usually I don't really go for more minimal tracks, but I really like this one and the way that your
That's
vocals
cool.
are layered as well. And then one of my other favorite songs is Bleed Out. Is there anything you can say about that song lyrically or how you came up with it?
Yeah, it's about like lyrically, it's about two brothers who like who have the same starting point in life, but then develop completely different. Um, and it sort of tries to talk about how when you're a family, you can try to escape um, your bonds if they're unhealthy for you, the bonds to the rest of the family, but eventually there will always be this bond, and you may be uplifted or dragged down by those bonds throughout life, depending on how your relationship is with those people. Um, so it's about like this one brother who prefers to speak through violence and conflict, and the other one who prefers to be diplomatic and peaceful. Um, and eventually, he that brother can't stay peaceful because he is affected by the other brother who sort of drags him down the abyss. Um, so yeah, it tries to describe how we affect each other in close in relationships, like that.
I also remember that during Tuska, I interviewed some of your bandmates, and we talked a little bit about the song "We Will Not Disband" and such.
Yeah.
But they couldn't really tell where you got the idea from, of course. But it
No.
sounded like the way they described you writing lyrics was something very abstract. And I was wondering, how do you usually go about that? Is that something, is it a very spontaneous process for you to come up with lyrics in general?
Yeah, definitely. It's I I never know how the lyrics will be. It's something that will be shaped by like a sentence that just pops up when we make the demos. So we might have written a verse, for example, for a song, and we have a vocal melody, and then after like a quick brainstorm on lyrics, I will just have one sentence that pops up, and that sentence will dictate how the rest of the song will go. Um, so yeah, and we will not disband. It's that truth be told sentence in the beginning, and that sort of became the framework for the rest of the song, and obviously survived until the final
Mm.
stage of the song. And I really like writing that way because I think it becomes very natural instead of having to sit down and really, pushing my brain to develop a certain story that fits a certain narrative. I'd rather write in this very spontaneous way, and then afterwards I'll see if the songs have like a similar theme, um, and from that point, like we can start looking at an album title, for example.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the way we like to work.
In that sense, I know that there's a lot of bands who, they give their songs working titles, and usually they're very silly. But do you work with working titles as well, or is the working title what ends up to be the, main lyrical idea and the song title in the end?
We do have some working titles, but I think maybe 75% of the time it or more, maybe nine out of 10 times, the working title will be the final song title.
Okay, that's interesting.
Um,
Well, you also mentioned that, that process is also how you get to the album's title, and Phantom, in that sense, were there sort of themes that you thought that were, similar across the songs that you ended up using that title or came up with it, or how did you come up with it in general?
it was partly inspired by the lyrics and partly by the artwork for the album. Um, and I think in terms of the lyrics, I view the Phantom as being an idea is that is dangerous for you, but it's something that you pursue anyway, because there's also something comforting about it. So that can be like being addicted to alcohol or drugs, or it can be following a certain ideology. Um, and like that might seem logical to you, but from the outside, it is clearly driving you down the wrong path and will eventually destroy you. Um, so that's what this friendship with the fandom is about. It's something that that won't work for you in the end, but something that's also sort of comforting, and that's what I get from the artwork also. Like it looks like this person on the cover is seeing a ghost, and that might be this idea that he or she follows, while all the birds are just flying away in a certain direction. I view that as like sort of being stuck in your ways while everybody else just continues their life, and you can't do that because you have your own struggles that just keep you in place.
Speaking about the artwork, I guess usually artists, they give the artist like the entire package, title, songs, everything. But what was sort of the idea that you gave the artist if there was no album title?
Well, it was actually the other way around. So we just found the image on Instagram. It's something we've done before, which seems to work for us. At least we're lucky every time in the end to find something. um, so we've just been browsing a lot, and this image showed up, and um, we bought the rights for it and added the VOLA logo and the album title. Um, and I think that's a very exciting process, because you can really find this particular image that just speaks to you, instead of relying on a designer who might not get it fully like you want it to be. So it has been working for us, at least up until now.
Yeah, and it's great that that also inspires you to come up with other things, like the title, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
Now you also mentioned you have a tour coming up, which you're preparing for currently. So what can you tell fans about the tour? Are you gonna play a lot of new music or?
Yes, we are. It's been difficult to make a set list because we have 4 albums out soon. Um, and earlier on, it was just about picking all the singles and then some deeper cuts. But now we really had to kill some darlings along the way. So that's been tough but exciting also. But yeah, well, we are working with the same lighting company again that we've worked with before, called Vertigo, and they will create something very cool on stage with us. Um, and then yeah, we'll just be away for a month with it'll be 3 other artists also on the tour. Um, but the opener will change during the trip, so there will just be 3 each night total. But there are 4 artists on the poster.
You mentioned you're preparing for the tour.
Yeah.
what does that usually, you know, apart from rehearsing the songs, what
Yeah.
are the sort of things you have to take care of before you head on the tour?
Well, in terms of the music, it's partly making backing tracks. For example, we have lots of keyboard layers that we put on backing tracks, and because I have produced the albums, I have all those tracks. So I'm sitting there. I'm I'm spending a lot of time right now preparing those for the shows. Um, and yeah, then there's just rehearsing on our own, and I have to learn to sing and play guitar at the same time for the songs. Like up until now, I've just been recording the guitars isolated and singing isolated.
Mm.
So now those two have to be combined. And that takes some time as well, just to get the guitar riffs really into my muscle memory.
Hmm.
Um, I will make mistakes anyway, but I will make fewer mistakes. That's in that way. um, and then next week we will all meet up and rehearse for 3 days, and then some weeks later we will have production rehearsals at a venue where we will test everything, the sound and the lights, and then we're should be ready to go on tour.
Yeah, it actually never occurred. Well, obviously it's logical, but it never really occurred to me that you obviously have to record everything separately. So, have you ever cursed yourself because the thing you wrote was too difficult for you to sing and play at the same time?
There've been some there have been some moments where I regretted a little bit having written something that felt difficult. Um, a paper wolf, for example, is hard to play and sing at the same time. So that's been a it's been a long process of really making that comfortable. Um, but yeah, it can be it can be troublesome sometimes. But I guess patience is your friend there, and it's just about spending a lot of time getting it into your fingers.
Well, yeah, I think I'm just gonna let you go and have you practice more. But is there any last thoughts you want to share with your fans before we wrap up this interview?
Well, I just hope to see them on tour this November. It's, we will do our best to play as few mistakes as possible. So come come have fun with us.